Innovation, one of those big shiny words, right? Feels like it's reserved for billion-dollar companies or people with crazy breakthroughs. But here's the thing, innovation isn't always about these wild, out-of-nowhere ideas. Sometimes it's just about tweaking something that already exists. Not 50 or not even 10%. Just a little, say, 3%. Yeah, 3%, that's it. And yet some of the most game-changing stuff in tech, design and music came from tiny adjustments. So bear with me and let me explain what it's called the 3% rule. This concept was named by Virgil Abloh, a designer, creative and cultural disruptor who understood something powerful. We, as humans, crave two things: familiarity and novelty, something that feels new but is still recognizable. Virgil's genius idea was realizing that you don't have to overhaul something completely to make it feel fresh. Just change 3% of it and you've something brand new.
Then I have my sort of like 3% approach. Right now I'm only interested in editing something 3% from its original form. I'm basically tired. It might be too old, but I found that things are intriguing to me when they're like slightly edited, like these shoes. You know, like this is an Air Force One. Essentially, I got asked to do another Air Force One. This is like a new one. But I was only interested in restraining myself and only editing it 3% because I don't want another shoe. I want to see something that makes me recognize the shoe that I already have, but it's a personal thing.
You see, Virgil applied this rule everywhere, from fashion to collabs with Nike and beyond. But this isn't just a fashion thing. You will see this principle pop up in other areas too, like tech, design, or even music. So let me show you 3 examples that will blow your mind.
An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
Alright, let's start with Apple. Here's a question for you. How the fuck does a company that basically drops the same phone every year stay at the top? Like seriously, what's the secret? Spoiler, it's the 3% rule. Now don't get me wrong, Apple doesn't call it that, but the principle is definitely there. Every year they tweak their products just enough to make them feel new while keeping what people already know and love. Think about it. The iPhone hasn't radically changed over a decade or so. Same general shape, same layout, but they have added small, meaningful updates over time. Dual cameras, game changer. Face ID, crazy convenient. And now dynamic island and a side button.
We truly live in an age of wonders.
This is what makes Apple brilliant. They understood that people like what's familiar, but they also want to feel like they are getting something fresh. Because it's not about reinventing the wheel, it's about refining it 3% at a time. But Apple didn't come up with this approach on their own. Let me show you where they might have gotten some inspiration. Okay, let's roll back to the 1950s. Back then, everything was loud. Radios were those clunky wooden monsters and furniture was over the top. But in the middle of this chaos was a guy named Dieter Rams. Dieter Rams was all about stripping away the fluff and focusing on what mattered. Take the Brown SK4 for example. At first glance, it's just another record player. But Rams made a couple of small changes that completely redefined it. He swapped out the heavy wooden cases that these kind of radios used to bring for a lighter, modern design, and he added a clear plexiglass lid. Yeah, that's it. 2 small tweaks. But suddenly the thing felt futuristic. What's wild about this is that these were massive changes. The overall functionality stayed the same. Even the design still felt familiar. But that 3% adjustment, it made all the difference. Because at the end of the day, people weren't just buying a radio, they were buying a design statement. But it gets even cooler. Dieter Rams' work didn't just influence his era. Decades later, Johnny Ive, the design genius behind Apple, straight up said Dieter Rams inspired him. So when you hold an iPhone or look at a MacBook or an iPad or even a Magic Mouse, you are basically seeing Dieter Rams' philosophy in action. Less is more, and small changes lead to big impacts. But this idea isn't just for physical products like a phonograph or a calculator or a phone. let's take a quick leap into music and see how this principle can be applied to art as well. Now let's talk about Dilla. If you don't know him, he's one of the greatest and most legendary producers ever. And honestly, nobody embodied the 3% rule in music quite like he did. You see, Dilla's magic was in the details. He would take tiny snippets of songs, and we're talking like fractions, seconds even, and flip them into something completely new. A loop here, a chop there, and boom, you have gotten a masterpiece. He wasn't reinventing music, he was just tweaking it, and it worked. So take a stop from his album Donuts, for example. He sampled Dionne Warwick's You Are Gonna Need Me, and if you listen closely, the core of the song is still there, even the same pitch. But Dilla looped it, chopped it at the drums, and somehow made it feel completely fresh while keeping the soul of the original song intact. Just like that, he changed the sound of hip-hop forever by doing small adjustments and getting big results. So here's the takeaway. Innovation doesn't have to mean tearing everything down and starting from scratch. Sometimes it's just about looking at what already works and asking, how can I make this slightly better? The 3% rule isn't just for designers or musicians or tech giants. It's for anyone who wants to create and improve or just live a little differently. So this leaves me with this last question for you guys. What's that 3% that you are going to change in your life? In the meantime, thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Ciao.